we go. Hello. My name's Sandor Weisz. I live in Chicago in an apartment that I call Titania, which is an acronym. This is my wife, Sarah. On our first date, I knew she was the one because when I brought out my crossword puzzle, she totally went for it. This is our son. In utero, his pseudonym was, that is to say, the name we called him, in utero was Perquacky, after one of our favorite games. When he was born, we named him Ezra Stanley, which is also an acronym for four of his great-grandparents, Eleanor, Zoltan, Ruth, and Stanley. This is our daughter. Her pseudonym was Rummy Cub. When she was born, we called her Zella, which, if you're being generous, you can find her birthday inside of it. So I like wordplay. I like puzzles. And I've spent the last 10 years building puzzle hunts for my friends, and the last year or so turning that passion into a business. And I'm going to tell you how I do it. So I was into puzzles from a young age. My dad had a subscription to Games Magazine, which I absorbed and consumed. When I was 10, he put on a puzzle hunt for me and my friends for my birthday, where the kids were solving this murder mystery, maybe not murder, but a mystery of some kind, and the adults were playing parts. And I recently found the dossiers he had written for all of these characters, and they were like 20 pages long. So you can see where I get it. When I was a little bit older, I got into things like Rubik's Cube and Rubik's Magic and Rubik's Clock, if anyone remembers that. No one remembers that. I'm into things like supervocalics, which are words or phrases that have all 5 vowels once, like here you see a mustachioed Julia Roberts holding a bottle of Cointreau and playing a tambourine. Those are all supervocalics. I even made a Twitter bot to scrape Wikipedia to find any mention of them. I started a blog called The Puzzler where I would post things that interested me that were puzzly and wordplay. I would write my own puzzles. But in all this time, I had not done what I really wanted to do, which was to put on my own puzzle hunt, which to me seemed like a really ambitious undertaking, and I had no idea how to do it. But I was about to turn 30, and I said, screw it, let's just send out the invitations. So about 5 weeks before my birthday, I did just that, and then I had to build it. And that first hunt, well, the theme was XXX, which was meant to represent 30, right? But I'll tell you, when you're trying to send out an invitation that's got XXX in the subject line, it does not get to its recipients. But eventually people came to our apartment and found me without a beard and a trench coat and a fedora, and I told them the story, which was, I think, a missing birthday cake, and then I sent them on their way. And I have to tell you, it was a hot mess. There were a lot of problems. What I thought were interesting puzzles were, in fact, small-scale mind torture devices for all my friends. From the very first puzzle, which was a Sudoku, where I had taken out the 8s and 9s and replaced them with zeros and double zeros for some reason, to the second puzzle, which was out on lampposts in the city, except that I didn't realize that it was illegal to do that, and so teams would go to the place where they thought there would be a puzzle, only to find a torn down sign, to a playing field that was way too big for an afternoon's puzzle hunt, to thing after thing after thing after thing. And on top of all this, what I had failed to realize was that while my friends were out gallivanting around town, playing my puzzles, I was going to be stuck at home, sweating, worried that everyone was having a terrible time, driving my wife crazy. And I was sure that when I went to the final location where everyone was gathering, I'd be met with a hailstorm of rocks and tomatoes. I wasn't. My friends were nice. They claimed they had a good time, though their faces were more like this, a mix of befuddlement and amusement. But they supported me, and they were into it, and because of their encouragement, I was able to do it again the next year and improve on it, and do it again another year, and then take it to places like the Art Institute, and the zoo, and the library, and then do it now for as a business. And I only got to this place by taking that first audacious step. If I had known how bad things would be, I would never have done it. But because I didn't know, because I was an idiot, I was able to take that step, fail miserably, without a doubt, and then get up and do it again, and improve on it year after year after year. And now I've systematized it. Now I'm in a place where I feel telling it to people. So, what am I talking about? Here's a short recipe for what a puzzle hunt is. First part is story, right? Whether it's the Riddler and Poison Ivy conspiring to capture Batman and recruit people into their legion of evil, or a picnic that's gone horribly wrong because you've invited the likes of Anakin Skywalker and Bilbo Baggins and Cthulhu and Demeter and Eloise, and one of them has poisoned the rest, or a tour around the world, or a missing mixtape from your youth, or a pile of money that leads to a plot to bribe aldermen, or a rock band that is touring and is currently playing at the House of Blues, and you have to inspect their poster for information. One part mystery. Now, of course, wouldn't be a puzzle hunt without puzzles. This is the puzzle part. Whether it's an array of business cards that seemingly normal business cards that have information embedded in them, or something encoded in the card catalog of the public library, or stumps nailed with signage and rope that you have to somehow connect. The third part is setting, right? So I could give you all one part setting, meaning I could give you all a pile of paper to do right now in your seat, and that would be puzzles. I could send you something, give you something to go home with or do it in your office, but it's not quite the same as doing it at the Art Institute, where you're walking around fine art, or walking through your neighborhood and looking in the window of a bookstore and finding books arrayed for you, or diving into a pool and finding a shell with something painted on it. And then there's the reward, right? You don't want to go to all this hard work without getting something at the end, whether it's Batman filled with candy or a replica of Van Gogh's ear. So that's your recipe. Here's the instructions. The first thing I do is I paint myself into a corner, and I'll tell you, just like any creative endeavor, it's always a cage match between my creativity on one hand and my procrastination on the other, and I'll give you a guess as to which one normally wins. Unless I give myself a deadline, and I do that by forcing my hand, sending out the invitations first, picking a theme, and then sending out the invitations. They're little time bombs, right, in the form of postcards or emails. And now people are planning on coming. Now people have a commitment. That means I have a commitment. And I still do this to this day every year. And now that I have clients, of course, that deadline is externally imposed and makes it easier. Then I absorb. So I walk around the space and I look for information, because puzzles are just translating one kind of information to another. So I look for any kinds of words, numbers, signage in the space that'll work towards a puzzle, and I write it all down. And then I blend it. If I find a beach, if I can find a beach, I'll walk on it. If I can go swimming, I'll do that. Just a way to get those ideas to percolate in my brain, make connections. And then I take those connections and I write them down and I put them up on the board. I externalize it, and that gives me room to think about more things. And then start to find patterns among the connections. Step 4 is the construct and the meta. The construct means figure out what all of these puzzles are going to solve to. You want your puzzles to solve to answers of a common type, whether it's like numbers or colors or places in Chicago. That's your construct. And then your meta is taking all those answers and figuring out a final puzzle that they'll all fit into at the very end. So for example, here's the Art Institute puzzle set. At the Art Institute, we decided that all of the puzzles would solve to pieces of art in the museum, and specifically the accession number, which is like an ID for this art. And that was really convenient, because then we had every answer giving us a number, and then we could take those numbers, and you could see there's slots for numbers up there, take the yellow digits and use them at the very end for the final puzzle. Or at the library, all the puzzles solve to characters from literature, specifically fiction. And then on top of that, we gave the teams this sticker sheet, which were icons from books. So they knew that, for example, if they got the answer Gollum, they would look on the sticker sheet and they would find a ring, and they'd say, oh, well, I know that we got it right because there's a ring there. And then they would mark that off. And on top of all that, just this year we decided to
use the 5 extra stickers on the sheet to make it a clue about where the final puzzle was, which in this case was Elephant and Castle at the corner of Clark and Adams. And then there's the puzzles. This is the meat of the endeavor, right? How do I write these things? So I'm going to touch on a few values, a few attributes that I like to embed into all the puzzles. The first one, and probably the most important, the one you're probably used to thinking about, is the aha moment, right? It's the realization that all of this information all of this chaotic information, when it suddenly clicks into place and forms a pattern. That's the aha moment. So I'm going to walk you through one of these puzzles really fast because we don't have a lot of time, and show you what I mean, right? So at the library, we put up a puzzle where we had 7 book covers from famous books that were tweaked in a certain way, right? That's obvious. What's not obvious is what you do with it. So let's say you're looking at this and you notice that you recognize the third one on the top is from a book called A Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius. But you don't remember a walk being on the cover of A Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius, and that's when it occurs to you that walk is 1 letter away from work. Oh, maybe I'm looking for the same thing across all the other book covers. And sure enough, you go down the line and you say, well, that's a cover for the Tin Drum, but there's a picture of Captain Morgan, which is a kind of rum, which means that I'm looking for a D. It's the tin rum, not the tin drum. Lord F. the Rings. A Clockwork Range, not orange. A Handmaid's Ale. Those are barrels of ale. Green Eggs and AM. And 100 Years of Solitude. And the letters that are missing from all these titles spell your answer, which is Dorothy, which leads to your sticker of the tornado. Okay. That went really fast. Usually teams get like 15 minutes apiece to work on those. So don't feel bad if you didn't have any idea what I was talking about. Tangibility to me means getting your hands dirty physically on something to play with as opposed to just pencil and paper. So for example, that could be a pile of Legos that you have to combine into a tower that spells a message. Or here you see a video of some people inspecting a lunchbox that was filled with a sandwich and a water bottle and some veggies and then a menu. And so you're focusing on the menu because you think there's information in there and you assume, well, the food is just there for decoration until you inspect the carrot a little closely and you find that there's a word carved into it. And then you open up the sandwich and you find that on inside we've burned a message into the bread. And then there's integration. That means using your environment as much as possible. So at the Art Institute, we made use of a bunch of the art that we found and anagrammed the titles into clues. Or in the sculpture section, we made a puzzle that required you to actually figure out the line of sight between 2 sculptures and figure out what sculpture was in that place and do that twice and then take those and find the third one in the middle. Or at the zoo, this is a schematic of the big cat house, and we said find all the animals that are in these cages and then add them together, which here are your big cats in those places. How do you add up 4 animals together? Anyone want to figure it out? Anyone got a guess? Those are all numbers if you think of them as operating systems. And if you do that, your answer is 42. I've hidden puzzles in honor boxes. We've made puzzles out of trees. We'd just like to integrate it as much as possible. And then when I can, I try to subvert expectations because that's what makes a puzzle interesting, right? When you're looking at one thing and you're assuming it's one thing and it turns out to be another. So I've embedded puzzles in Chinese takeout menus and hung them from doorknobs, and nothing is more visible than a Chinese menu hanging from a doorknob. Why would there be anything in there besides Chinese food? Or put them into the personal section of the reader. Or here's a poem that was a puzzle from the Art Institute that is presumably telling you all the pieces of art in a room that do not qualify. And presumably what you expect is the one that is missing, the one that does not get disqualified from this poem will be my answer, right? So looking for something that doesn't have a flower or a staff or water. And so here's a picture of a team doing that. And the problem is there's no piece of art that qualifies. They all get disqualified from that poem. And the reason is you're not actually looking for a piece of art. I never said that. All I said was you're looking for a lone, unblushing soul, which is her. And then she shows you the answer. And then finally, I like to put in something creative, meaning some people don't like the analytical stuff, so I give them something more creative to do, like spinning a globe, pointing to a country, and then writing a limerick about it. Or going into the children's library and finding books and using their spines to write a poem. And in case you're wondering why there's a children's book called Billy the Condom, it's called Billy the Condominium Cat. With some fortunate tape. Or playing team building games, or posing like your favorite statue, and so on. And I said that was finally, but this is really finally. Test, test, test. It's not a real puzzle unless you put it in front of someone and proven that it works. This may seem obvious, but didn't occur to me for 7 years. I spent 6 puzzle hunts designing these things and wondering while my friends were frustrated. And then I realized, oh, maybe I should take some of the lessons from user interface design, which was my previous career, and test it. And I was blown away by how powerful that can be. And then I organized the teams. This is like right before the hunt starts, organize the teams. You want a balance of skill and personality and creativity, and we usually do a pretty good job. So this is my life now. I build hunts for places like the Architecture Foundation, for the Soho House, the Children's Museum. I built a month-long game for like 6,000 Cards Against Humanity fans. That was a puzzle and a story and theater. I built a puzzle for a novel. I put on this event every month called Puzzled Pint, which is actually this Tuesday. If you're interested, it's free, puzzledpint.com. I put puzzles on the air on NPR, and I'm on Chicago Tonight once a month, befuddling Phil Ponce. And most recently, I designed a room escape / interactive theater / live action puzzle game with the House Theater, and this is ongoing at least until June. You should go play. You put on jumpsuits. You're in charge of a missile command center, and you're trying to outsmart a computer that's trying to launch missiles to start World War III. Small stakes. And all of this wouldn't have been possible if I hadn't taken that leap, right? If I hadn't taken that leap, which I only was able to take because I had spent 10 years honing my craft by doing it on the side, by testing and retesting and testing and retesting and practicing. And now I'm in a place where I get to bring the thrill of the hunt to as many people as possible. So thank you.